Hello, everyone. This is Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ. Welcome to today's Connect webinar with Synology. This is their first webinar with CUGC, so I'm very excited to have them on with us today. I'm going to be talking about their high availability storage and disaster recovery solutions for Citrix and remote PCs, and I know this is a big topic for a lot of you guys out there today. So I will get us started here. But before we dive in, I just want to make you aware of some of our upcoming CUGC events. We are still having our local group meetings. They're all virtual still, but they're still a lot of fun. So definitely check out our events calendar. There's a link in the chat for you that goes directly to our calendar. You can see what's coming up. And check out all of the great events we have, including our 2 next XL events. Those are our mostly day-long events, not a full day, but it's a good chunk of the day, and it's lots of technical information. Usually we have fun pre-game sessions like, I think we've learned about barbecue sauces by region and how to cook, but then we dive into lots of great technical stuff, and it's all free. So definitely check out the calendar. They're definitely worth attending, and lots of good networking going on there. Also, if you have missed a webinar recently, because we've been having a lot of them, definitely check out our webinar recording library. You must be logged in with your CUGC member account, and if you don't have an account, it's easy to get one, and it's free. But log in, click on the files section of the nav bar up top, click on webinar recordings, and you have access to our complete library of webinars going back all the way to 2015. It's a lot of webinars. It's a lot to keep you busy. Hope you'll check that out. All right, so today we are recording this webinar. You will get a link to the recording. It's going to come to you in an email directly from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. Also, we want you to submit your questions at any time. Just submit them as you have them so you don't forget them. But we're going to save them for the end after the presentation, but we will get to as many as we can, so definitely put those in. And also just a reminder that at the end of the webinar, I'm going to put a link to a survey. It's for CUGC use only. It's anonymous and it's very, very short. All right, so who do we have with us today? We have Shane Kleinert. He is one of our South Florida CUGC leaders. He is a CTP, and he's here to keep an eye on all of your questions. Shane, you want to say hello to everyone?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending on what part of the world you're coming from. Excited to be here today and moderate the questions. So yeah, looking forward to it. Just make the session interactive, ask questions, and we'll address them all at the end.
Thanks, Shane.
Yep.
All right, and from Synology, we have Dustin Koontz. He is a product manager, and I am going to put everything into his capable hands right now so he can get us started. Dustin, I'm going to send you the screen, and you should have that. All right, I see your slides.
All right, hello CUGC. Today I'm going to present several solutions from Synology with an overarching theme of protecting your data with high availability storage and implementing a disaster recovery plan. So my name is Dustin. I'm a product manager at Synology, and I focus on consulting to make sure that you're aware of what solutions we offer and find the ones that work for you. So I'm going to start out covering iSCSI storage for Citrix hypervisor. From there, we're going to shift to an important subject when so many people are working remotely, and that's file sharing, syncing, and backup. Then I'll show you how you can ensure all those VMs and files are safe. So we're going to start off with iSCSI storage for VMs. But first, let me give you a brief overview of Synology in case you're not familiar with us or you haven't seen how broad our product line is. Synology makes network-attached storage servers in both desktop and rack mount formats. We start at a single bay NAS and scale all the way up to 1.5 petabytes on our largest NAS. Within that large range, you have plenty of options, whether it's something for a small or large business. One thing that's great about Synology solutions is that we support adding drives to expand, adding expansion unit hardware, or migrating your disk over to another Synology NAS. That means lower upfront costs, and you can plan ahead and accommodate for the lifespan of a deployment. So on our servers, we run our Disk Station Manager operating system, which are otherwise referred to as DSM. DSM is a web-based interface. There's no software to install on your computer, and it comes with a huge variety of functionality and applications. Most of those applications are license-free, including DSM itself. To drive that point home, everything today that I'm going to show you has no license fees from us. You'll purchase your Synology NAS server, and then that's it. We support storage for virtualization across a wide variety of platforms. All those badges you see there on that page are for certifications, and of course, we are Citrix certified. For VM storage, we recommend using the iSCSI protocol. The way this works is that on the Synology NAS, you'll create an iSCSI LUN, which is a chunk of storage you'll be serving over to the hypervisor. The hypervisor will see that LUN as if you added a physical drive to it, so the hypervisor is then able to format the LUN and then use it as a storage location for VMs. You can create multiple LUNs as you need to, and we support both hard drives and solid state drives in all of our NAS. So you can have both high performance storage with solid state drives and lower performance storage with hard drives, but more capacity. And you can even do that in the same NAS if you wish to. So let me go ahead and jump into my first demo here. Just give me 1 second to change windows. So this first one is going to be unique, and I am remote desktoping into my office to do this one. So it is going to be a little bit blurry, but this is where I do have Citrix Hypervisor set up. So the first thing you're looking at here is the DSM interface. So I'm in a web browser right now. This is what you see once you log in and install it. Once you get it up going and you want to change your settings, that's all done in the control panel. So I open up this, expand it out. And here is where you can add users, you can change your firewall settings, your network settings, all the things like that. That's not the focus of this presentation, so let me go ahead and show you what it's like to set up an iSCSI LUN. So to do that, I'm going to show you the iSCSI manager. So right when you open up the manager, you can see that I've already got some LUNs set up and everything is healthy, everything is running well, so I have no concerns. If you did have, connection error to one of your targets or there's some other sort of error, it would warn you right when you got into it. So to create a LUN, you're also going to need a target to go with it. So I'm actually going to start in this target area. The targets are what you're going to connect to. It's basically like a URL that is associated with this, and then it allows you to access the LUN. So I'm going to change this to 3. Sorry about that. Hold on, my keyboard is doing something funny. Weird. Give me 1 second. All right, so I'm gonna just try to do this with default settings because I can't type apparently. So I'm just gonna click next here. I'm gonna create a new iSCSI LUN. And this is when you need to start making some decisions. So for the LUN, you could adjust the capacity to whatever free space you have on the NAS. And then your other important decision is gonna be if you want thick provisioning or thin provisioning. So thick provisioning will say if you have a 5 gig LUN and you determine that's your size for it, it's always going to use 5 gigs on the NAS. If you set it to thin provisioning and you have a 5 gig LUN, but you only store 1 gig of data on it, then it's actually only going to store 1 gig of data. But you can see that if you use thick provisioning, all the options are not available. So with thin provisioning, you get access to everything. So thin provisioning does not always perform as well, but depending on your use case, you might consider that these feature sets are more important, particularly snapshots. Snapshots allow you to take a snapshot of the iSCSI LUN, so you can then go back in time and restore to specific snapshots. And thin provisioning also supports space reclamation. Space reclamation means that if you are using 1 gig, you go up to 3 gigs, and then you go back to 2 gigs, that will all actually be reflected. But this is not enabled by default because it is one of those things that can reduce performance once it reclaims that space. So I'm just going to go ahead and create this thin provision LUN. So you're going to see this a lot in my demos today, that it'll just give you a nice little overview of everything that you've set up. So now we have a LUN created and a target. I'm going to double check the target IQN here. All right, so my next step is to go into Citrix. Sorry, my shortcuts are not being friendly with me at the moment. Give me 1 second. Let me try something. Very odd. So unfortunately, I don't know why it's not working now during the presentation when it was earlier, but I was going to show the setup on the Citrix hypervisor side, so I can just talk you through it. In short, what you do is you go into the iSCSI connection, which is the default when you add storage into Citrix. From there, you're going to type in the information for what you want to name your storage, and then you type in the IP address of the NAS. It scans for the target. You choose your target, and then you choose your LUN, and then you use Citrix hypervisor to format all that. And then it's available as storage, just like you would do with a physical drive. All right, so let's get back into the presentation. So now that we have our storage for our VM setup, let's kind of shift this conversation a little bit. And now let's focus on talking about how you can leverage file storage on a Synology NAS and let your employees access their data remotely. So everybody at this point knows that much of work has shifted to remote work, and this has been a change for a lot of offices. So you can see that in this particular study that there was a nearly 40% rise in working remotely. To give you a real life example, both Synology offices in the US are still working remotely. But here at Synology, file access is not something we have to worry about. So let's talk about our solutions and the problems that we could solve with those. So the big obstacles that Synology products can address are sharing files among remote team members while also ensuring that that data is backed up. So you got to consider that you don't want files stuck forever on somebody's laptop. When they create a document, they need to be able to share it with the rest of the office, and you also want to make sure that that document is backed up, just for all the usual reasons that you want to back up your data. So the easiest solution is going to be using our Synology Drive software. Drive provides a modern web interface that users can use to access their files. You can set this up for individual data storage or for collaborative work inside team folders. Synology Drive, like many of our solutions, works with our Quick Connect service for external access. You can also use a domain name if you want. Quick Connect does not require any port forwarding, and what it does is it first tries to directly connect the client and the NAS, and then if it does it, it can fall back to a relay server automatically. Synology Drive has file version history integration. That means if a change is made, you can go back in time and restore to previous versions. This is a feature we actually offer for the entire NAS through Snapshots. So this is a capability you can take advantage of for LUNs as well for your VM storage. So you do get that rollback capability. And one common use case we see for Synology Drive is people sharing documents outside of the company. So you can either turn that off completely, you can make file sharing internal only, so now employees can only share with each other, or when files are shared, you can set up permissions like they're read only. So now that I've talked to you about it a bit, let me just go ahead and show you a quick demo of Synology Drive. All right, so here we are back in DSM. So before I showed you the control panel and the iSCSI manager, I'm going to show you a feature in the control panel to set up remote access, and that's the quick connect feature I was talking about. So if I click on this quick connect icon, you'll see that I haven't set this up yet. So what this requires to set up is a Synology account. This is like an online account that you'll register with us with an email address. And this is also used for things like support tickets and a couple other services that we offer. So you'll click the enable quick connect button, and then you're able to create an ID. This ID is unique to each NAS. So if you have like an office in multiple locations, make sure you have some sort of naming scheme that makes sense for all your locations. And then the users to log in will have their own user ID and password. So they'll need the ID, their username, and their password, and then they're able to log in. We talk about some settings that are available. So hopefully you can see this, even though I don't have it enabled at the moment, just to not expose any email addresses. But the first thing I want to highlight is at the bottom are these permission settings. So you could actually make it so you could only use Quick Connect for specific services. So I'm about to show you Synology Drive. You can make it so only Synology Drive is accessible remotely instead of opening up all of DSM or opening up a mobile application. So that is available to you. I also mentioned that Quick Connect can either try a direct connection remotely, or it can try to use the relay service. So those are the options up here. So it could try to automatically create port forwarding rules, or it could, and then if that does not work, then it falls back on the relay service, and you have the option to enable or disable either of those. So now with remote access set up, let's start to get people into this thing. So let's go to the Synology Drive admin console. So one thing that you'll see a lot is we like the pages that have overviews on it, like this one. So right when you get into anything that you're going to open up, you'll see a nice little summary of everything that's going on. This is a very basic setup. I just have a single client connected and not much data. So the important thing that I want to show you is the team folder section. So the Drive admin console is kind of like your setup before people actually use it. So if I go to the team folder section, there's three things listed. So My Drive is what is enabled by default. My Drive is the individual storage space that I talked about earlier. So that means when somebody logs into it, they're able to upload and download files from this storage space, but nobody else except for the administrator can access it. But I did enable the documents team folder. So this is a shared folder on the NAS. So that means anybody with the permissions to access that folder can get into that folder. So permissions can be for read write, read only, however you want to set that up. So in this case, they have access to both an individual location and then a location that's going to be shared with other people. All right, so now with the setup done, let me go ahead and show you what the Synology Drive interface looks like when the users log in. So here, you could see that it's going to look familiar to possibly some cloud-based solutions that you're used to for file storage, but this is all hosted on the Synology NAS itself. So this is the personal location that I talked about. If you could look at the top left, this says My Drive. So this is all their personal stuff. If I click on Team folder, that's where it shows that documents folder that I set up earlier. So this would be the one that is shared amongst the team members that have permission to access it. And here, it's pretty basic. You'll see your directory structure. You can go in, you can download files, you can upload files, you can rename them, you can move them around, all the usual things that you would expect. We do have our own integrated office software, so you can even view these files, and if you convert them to that office format, you can even edit them as well. So we do offer flexibility and various options to you. And that is the most basic way to use Synology Drive, but it does have some more features that you can make use of. So let me flip back into the presentation. All right, so people are able to log in remotely. They're able to see their files. Everything is going great so far. So let's take a look at this use case. So we're a radio station and need to sync large audio files between offices. And this came from a real life use case that was brought to us. So this is a problem that they asked for a solution and we were able to provide it. So let's break down what they're saying here. They have multiple offices, so multiple physical distinct locations, and they have files that need to exist at each of those locations. And Synology Drive is able to provide that capability. So one of the problems that we come across is that it's difficult to share large files. So people might have limited internet bandwidth and they don't want to sit there and wait for their upload to finish. So Synology Drive can help out here. We have traffic control options to ensure that the network itself doesn't get saturated when a bunch of people are using it. And there's no need to wait for larger transfers to finish, as Synology Drive will work automatically. So with syncing, it's very flexible. So you could sync between NAS or with users' computers. So that means if you create files A, B, and C, so if you look at the top or, for the Los Angeles design team, they have those files there. You could sync them either to a user's computer or to another NAS. So you have both those options available. And there aren't any file size limitations if you're used to that from a cloud provider, so you don't need to worry about that. And then once those files are synced, whether it's to a NAS or onto somebody's, like a laptop that they brought home, those files can be accessed directly on that device. So if someone's at home, that means the file's on their computer, so it's not going to be slowed to load over the internet. And if there are people working in the office, they can just log into the NAS directly without needing to sync, because the sync is actually going to happen in the background between, like their Los Angeles site and their Philadelphia site. So this really minimizes the work that is needed for the end users. And of course, we don't make you dump the entire computer on, the entire NAS onto somebody's computer when you set this up. So the first thing I want to mention is that you could select what specific folders that you sync. And within that sync task, you could filter by file type. And to further save space, if someone is using Windows 10, we support on-demand syncing. So Microsoft has a feature built in that lets a syncing application have a shortcut to each file appear on the user's computer, and the file is only downloaded when it's accessed. If needed, files or folders can be pinned ahead of time so they stay in sync. And that's what I'm going to demo for you right now. So let me switch over to the relevant desktop. All right, so you're looking at the Synology Drive client. You can see I'm just logged into Windows 10 and I pulled up this client. I already have 2 sync tasks set up. To give you an example, I have one connected through Quick Connect, which is this one up top. So this is actually back in the office and I am doing this presentation from home. And then I also set it up with a local NAS. So no matter how you want to set this up, we support it. When you log in, it's pretty easy. I'll just show you what the create screen looks like. You just type in either the domain name or the Quick Connected ID or the IP address, and then you have a username and password. So since I'm already logged in, I'm just going to show you the settings that are available. If I click on sync rules, so the first thing you see is that you're able to adjust what subfolders are going to sync. So if I don't want to sync any of these folders, I don't have to. The next thing is with the file filters. One feature that I like is you can set a maximum size to sync. So if you have some very large files, like maybe you have some ISO files that don't need to be synced back up to the company NAS, you can just set it, at a 500 megabyte limit. And then it already has by default some file types that don't support syncing are already included. And then you can add more file types that you want to not have sync. And then the sync mode is where we see some good options. So the default is going to be two-way sync. That means you drop a file on the computer, it uploads it to the NAS. If you drop a file onto the NAS and it's in a folder that's set up for syncing, it's going to drop it on that person's computer. You also have the option to download data from Synology Drive server only. This is useful in cases where maybe you want the employees to have the data, but you don't want them to be able to upload to the server. And the on-demand setting that I mentioned, where it will just save like a placeholder of the file, that's just a checkbox. There's nothing advanced needed to get that going. So just to show you a quick idea of what a sync is, I'm just going to click on this, open it up. So you can see here, if you look at this graphics folder, it has a check mark. That means it's been synced. The ones with the clouds are the file is available, but it's not on the computer. If I open this up, it's just a screenshot. Hey, look, it's a screenshot. I'm going to close that. now you can see that it's gone from a cloud to a green check mark. So the green check mark means that file is now actually on the computer. So whatever changes that you make, if I drop the file in here, it would sync up to the NAS, and then if I drop the file in this equivalent place on the NAS, then it would drop back down here. So that's what syncing is for. It's just a really fluid way for end users to be able to interact with NAS, and they don't need to go through a VPN or anything like that. We try to make it as simple as possible, and with the on-demand feature especially, this works very much like a network drive, but it's through our software instead. So, all right, so now we have people set up remotely. They're able to log into the web interface. They're able to use the Synology Drive client to sync the files on their computer. Things are going great at this point. But what about when things go wrong? So here's another real inquiry that came into us. So we need a plan for backing up laptops at employee homes. So let's take a look at the elements here. They have people using laptops outside of the office, and now they need to make sure the data on these laptops is protected. So traditionally, the way that backups are done is that an employee has a computer at work, it connects to the work network, and it gets backed up when it's on that network. When an employee takes that computer home, backups are still possible, but now you'll have to open ports, which could be a security risk, or use a VPN, which will be more difficult to set up and maintain. The Synology Drive client has a backup option that is just as simple as setting up a sync. This will do a one-way sync of the data from the user's computer to the NAS while making sure that the file deletions are not synced. And this is super easy to set up, just like what I just showed you. It's just going to have a quick connect ID, the username and password. And one thing that I want to note is that you can back up specific folders. So this is important for a variety of reasons. If the employer has a bring your own device program, there could be personal data stored next to business data. The user can choose a specific folder to back up to ensure that only their work data is backed up. So not only is that data being protected, you're only backing up the data that you need to. And let me just show you what this looks like real fast. All right, so here we are back in the Synology Drive client. And before we are in the sync task section, so you can see over here on the left, I'm going to go ahead and go to the backup task section. So I already have the setup once again, just to make this simple and straightforward. So the process of adding it is the same as before, just a quick connect ID, username and password. The backup settings are actually going to look very similar, but the first difference is you're going to have a lot of options of how what you're going to choose to back up. So this is listing the entire computer, and I could check what folders to back up. And then the backup destination is going to be to the user's personal space. So that means only the administrator and the user can access this data. So that means nobody else is going to be able to see their backups and what's being backed up. The backup rules are the same filter options that you saw before. So, certain file types, or if you want to restrict it by file size. And then you also have the backup mode. So this is where things are a little bit different. So Synology Drive is typically syncing software. So it does a continuous backup, it does a continuous sync between the NAS and the computer. So with this backup mode, you can do it continuously if you want, but we also support setting it up manually. So it only backs up when you click that backup button. And then you can set up a schedule. So you can have the schedule run daily, you can have it run on the weekend or on certain days. And then you set up a frequency, like how often it's done, and then when you have that backup finish. So you do get lots of flexibility there. And once it's set up, it'll just run on its own if you have it scheduled, or you can always do that manual backup. And as you can see, this is a very simple interface. That is kind of our goal with a lot of what we do, just to make it streamlined as possible, so that there's nothing to kind of like minimize like what will go wrong. All right. So now we've covered VM and file storage and then how to access those files remotely. What's next is protecting that data. And so that's going to be our disaster recovery section here at the end. So there's multiple pieces to discuss here, including hardware failover, snapshots, and a replication. The most reliable system will implement all these features, but that's not necessarily required. If you want, you can use these features independently. So I'm going to talk about these 3 different sections, but you can use them all together or all separately if you want to. All right, so the first part of this is high availability, which is about hardware protection. This feature is available on most of our Plus series and higher, and what it does is create a failover cluster between 2 identical servers. So to do all that, the data in the active server gets sent to the passive server automatically. So this is more comparable to RAID than a backup. If the active server fails, then the passive takes over. It is meant to maintain uptime. So let's discuss how this works. So on this page, the exclamation point is showing that there's some sort of error happening on the active server. At this point, you can initiate a manual failover to the other server, but if there's some sort of severe problem happening, then an automatic failover will kick in. To give you a better idea of what would be considered more of a general error versus something where it's going to fail over automatically, let's talk about hard drives. If a hard drive gets a couple bad sectors, most of the time, unless it gets really bad, it's still going to be in the RAID. So you're seeing the problem, you know the problem's going to get worse, but it hasn't actually impacted you yet. So at that point, you could do a manual failover and then switch the roles of the NAS and then pull out that bad drive, replace it, and then run a repair job, and then everything is back to normal. However, let's stick with the hard drive example, and let's say multiple hard drives failed at once. Like maybe there was some sort of, somebody bumped into the server or something like that happened. So in this case, the RAID would crash based on what parity level you set it to, and then that's when an automatic failure would kick in, because at that point there's nothing that accessible on the active servers. That's when it will fail over on its own. So when this happens, you can see that on the diagram, the server on the right has now become the active server. And so what happens to the rest of your devices when this is going on? Well, we made this process really easy. So there's a virtual IP address that is shared between these 2 NAS. So any device that is connected to that IP address is still able to connect, even though the 2 servers have actually changed roles. Those devices will think that they're connecting to a single NAS. So there's actually nothing to configure to those devices, including your Citrix hypervisors. It's just going to keep connecting to that same point that it was always connecting to. So there's nothing to change in your settings. So let me go ahead and just show you what the high availability manager looks like. All right. So this is set up in the office, but I am accessing this remotely through my web browser this time and not using a remote desktop. So here you can see what I mean. You have your active setup and your passive setup. So on the left is a 2-base server that's acting as the active server, and then it is directly connected with an Ethernet cable to the passive server, and it's sending the data. And you can see what I mean by the active and passive relationship even further if you look at the host utilization. So you can see that the one on the left is, it's doing a bunch of work. It's busy processing me logging into it. It's hosting a VM that I had set up in Citrix Hypervisor, which unfortunately I did not get to show you. And then you can see the passive server is not nearly as busy. All it's doing is receiving data from the first one. So there's just a couple of things I want to highlight with this. The first thing is the network section. So this is a NAS that has 2 network cards on it. So
I think we might have lost Dustin's audio. Dustin, can you hear us? Let me see. His microphone is green.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Yeah,
I can
I
hear
had
you,
lost
Shane.
audio too. I don't know if
Okay.
that's all right. I lost some audio too, so I don't know if that was a platform thing, but looks like it's just starting to come back. So you might pop back in a second.
Everything looks okay with him, but I can't, I still can't hear him. I don't know if he can hear us.
Well, if he doesn't come back soon, I'm just everybody. Elvish voice. So yeah, I'm assuming he'll be back in a second. If not, there are some questions. I don't know if it's something that you know, if some of these questions that we want some of the other folks on the team to answer, we want to wait for Justin. There's some good questions that came in. One came in from Jacob. I think just called you out there, Jacob. But you had a good kind of talking point there about some newer technologies that I think you worked with Synology that you're excited about, and I think does that here shortly. Looks like the screen's coming back, so my stalling skills are working, and looks like he might be back now. Are you there, Dustin? We could dial in on the phone.
Nope, I see the slides moving around, but don't hear him.
Yeah, maybe he's. Let me message him or something real quick to him. Just tell him to dial in, maybe.
Sorry, everyone. You know how it is with live TV. There are things that always go awry.
I know this is that moment on live TV, like where you shine, right? Like you got what, 500 viewers, dead air. You got to do something entertaining. This is like high pressure situation right now. I didn't prepare for this.
Well, you don't want my singing voice, that's for sure. But I don't know about
Yeah,
Shane's.
I have like low budget jokes. So, well, my jokes are like low budget, so I don't really have any like great jokes. They're usually low key. I did have some interesting questions that I came up with from watching the presentation, and I kind of jotted down. I don't know if anyone in the audience was thinking the same thing, but I think it's pretty neat, the remote file sync capabilities. And I saw a guy had put some thoughts like, hey, what about ShareFile, right? It seems a little bit like kind of on-prem storage zone controllers and some of the functionality there. So it'd be interesting to kind of understand a little bit more on the direction where that's going. For me personally, I was interested in. I think that's pretty neat. I'm curious if they're integrating with other third-party solutions as part of that. If a customer has data on OneDrive and some data on Dropbox or ShareFile, are they going to help out with that or not? I think that'd be kind of a neat feature. I was curious about like data classification. That's something that you see more and more happening in the enterprise. A lot of the file storage solutions are starting to classify data and looking for DLP and things like Social Security and credit cards and kind of flagging those things. Those are all kind of interesting things I was thinking about. Oh, we got someone had posted a joke. That's good. I like that. Yeah, I'll read them and then we'll get responses. What did the ghost teacher say to her class? I don't know that one. I'm horrible at these jokes. You ready? Watch the board and I'll go through it again. Yeah. Boom. So it's odd because I see his screen moving. Do you guys like have his cell phone? Maybe give him a call,
Yeah,
say, hey, he's rocking and rolling, and I don't think he knows that we can't hear him.
that's
He's
what I
talking
was
through the total.
thinking.
I could
Yeah.
just paraphrase. So what we have here is an active passive cluster with redundant storage. It's the CSA 3400. 2
Sorry,
for
hey,
12K.
I'm guessing my mic went out.
Oh, there he
Yeah, there
is.
you
Hey,
are.
Dustin, we were telling jokes.
Dude, man,
What
we
time
were
did that
going.
thing go?
I was about 7 minutes ago. I'm
Oh
sweating
wow,
here,
really?
man. Armpits are sweaty. Yeah, just trying to like keep things going. But no, I think yeah. So yeah, you were gone like I think right around you were going over the high availability, active, passive, kind of talking through that. That's kind of where it dropped out. So I guess maybe just summarize the end game there.
Sure.
For the audience.
Did
Yeah.
everybody get to see the GUI for it? I feel like that gives you a pretty clear explanation.
Yeah, the GUI, we were kind of frozen on the GUI for a bit. That's what I
Interesting.
think the audio. Yeah.
The things that could happen with the webinars. Okay, yeah. So to give the summary of high availability, and this is a good page to talk about it, I guess, and how our solutions work. Is the basic solution is you have an active passive failover, and you buy 2 NAS to do it, but you can do it, from everything from a more entry level NAS all the way up to a high end NAS. In an active passive setup, when the active fails, then it switches everything over to the passive server, but there's a virtual IP address shared between them, so your devices that are connecting to that high availability cluster don't actually have to change any of the configuration settings. So we may try to make that very easy and simple. And what I was showing in this section, I'll go back to the 2 models, is that on the high end now, so this is for business use, for larger businesses, is we have 2 models that have high availability built into it. The UC3200 is for iSCSI only, so this is for your virtual machine deployments. It has very high IOPS ratings because it has that active capability. So especially if you throw some SSDs in that thing, it'll do very well performance-wise. The SA3200D, on the other hand, is a more general use NAS. It has our usual active passive high availability setup, but it does give you access to all the DSM features. So it's able to do everything that I showed you throughout the rest of the demo today. And then getting back to this slide, basically we're showing that if you are looking for high availability and you're like a large business and you need the failover capability and you're at that 2U 12 bay range, take a look at the SA3200D or the UC3200 because it's gonna simplify your deployment and also save you some money. So we don't make money off the hard drives here, so I'm just strictly talking about our products. And our products are going to be cost less and it's going to be much easier to deploy. So this is an option that we've only had in the past year. So we're keeping high availability around as a general use thing, but these products are new and they are geared entirely for the high end market. All right. So whether or not you deploy high availability, our snapshot replication tool is powerful and something I'd recommend for just about any deployment. As you can guess from the name, it has both snapshot and a replication functionality. Snapshots are point-in-time copies of the data that are taken instantly and can be restored instantly. This works for both iSCSI and file-level data, so you can restore back to specific points in time. And this technology is very efficient. So these snapshots are not only instant, they only take as much space as what changed after the previous snapshot. You can then take your data and snapshots and replicate them off-site. So those instant snapshots have no performance impact, and you can schedule them down to every 5 minutes if you want to. You can then recover data very fast on-site due to the way that the snapshots integrate with the file system. If you send your data and snapshots off-site, you can either do an export to a secondary device to then load it onto that remote server, or you could temporarily bring that remote server on-site. Once the remote site is set up, there's manual failover capabilities, so you can use the remote site in place. And since restorations take seconds, you'll be up and running as fast as you can direct people towards that remote NAS. All right, so for the last demo of the day, let me go ahead and just show you what the interface for this one looks like. All right. So, of course, another overview page, and here what it focuses on is I already have some snapshots scheduled, and I have some that are not, so it's telling me what isn't protected. So setting this up is incredibly simple. So all you do is you click on any of these and you go to the settings, you set up a snapshot schedule, You can have it go every 5 minutes, as I said, or you can do it once a day, whatever you need to do. And you can have it run on certain days and start at certain times and then stop it at certain times. So if you do have like a network capability concern or just a performance concern in general, you can limit when this runs. Retention settings are the other important thing that I want to talk about here. So your schedule is how often it runs. Retention is how many snapshots it keeps. So you can retain all your snapshots, of course. You can retain a specific number, or you can change it so that you have a set of rules that define your retention. And this is the one I really like. So if you adjust this advanced setting, then you could say, I want, X number of hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly snapshots. So that means if you set this to 4 monthly, that means if it's 4 months from now, I can go back to 4 months ago and get those snapshots. So we'll always keep one from that month, one from the week, and whatever you set it to. So this is very useful, not just for reducing your storage, but also consider what your restoration process is going to be like. For restoring those files, do you really want to dig through 1,024 snapshots to find out what you need? No. Probably if you're going back a year, you don't need something from exactly 365 days ago. You probably just need something from around that time period. But the work that you did more recently that's fresher in your mind, you probably are going to want more active snapshots available so you can go back to, oh, okay, we made this big change 3 days ago. Let's roll back to before we made that change. So you want more snapshots that are closer to the current time period. But that's all up to you to set up. I'm just kind of giving my advice for what I've seen people deploy and how to make it a little bit easier to use. All right, so that's all it takes to schedule some snapshots. If you want to, you can manually take snapshots as well. And then the other part of this is replicating. So snapshots are on the device that they're being stored. So replication is going to take the data and the snapshots and replicate them to another location. So for this one, you could do a local replication. That means the same server, but a different volume. I'd only recommend this if you had an expansion chassis, because you want completely separate RAIDs just to make sure that it actually is a backup and not just another form of redundancy. So I'm going to do remote, even though technically it will be a server that is on site for the sake of this demo. And all you do is you type in your login info. I'm going to adjust some settings for this specific one. So if you do have custom DSM ports and things like that, that's all compatible. Give it 1 second to load. What it's going to do is it's going to check this other NAS to see, like, hey, am I allowed to replicate to this? And then how much storage do you have for me to do it? So there we go. It pops right up. I got 3 terabytes left. We're good to go. And here you just check what folders you want to replicate. It gives you an estimate of how long this is going to take. And then it gives you the option to sync it immediately. I mentioned earlier that you could export it before you use it at the remote site. So that's what the bottom option is. And then you just set a schedule, exactly what you've seen with all of our other schedule functionality so far. And this one also has the option to make sure that this replication only happens during a certain time. So you don't want to overload your network or your WAN connection. If your upload speeds aren't great, you can have this just done at night. Same thing, same retention rules are available. So one thing that you kind of see is if you have solid state drives installed in your NAS, you're not going to have much storage. So you can have a smaller number of snapshots available locally and then replicate to a NAS with hard drives and then keep more of your files and snapshots there. And this is also useful for if you have data compliance. So if you have to keep a year of data, you could replicate it and keep it that entire year offsite instead of directly on the NAS that you're using. And then once you get to the end, same thing it always does. It gives you a nice little summary. And then that replication will begin. And that's pretty much it. So it's going to do its thing in the background, and it'll start going. All right. So this wraps it up as far as the presentation will go. I'm not entirely sure if you get a copy of the presentation, but if not, these links are very easy to find on our website. So just to give you the quick rundown, ask product questions, you go to the contact us section. This is where you could ask my team things like, hey, does a Synology have X or Y functionality? Or if you need help with a NAS recommendation, that's something that we could do for you. If you are a reseller and you're not a end user or somebody who works in IT, if you're somebody who actually has a business that sells NAS to other people, go ahead and sign up as a partner with us. We could talk to you about what that offers. That's a separate team, but that form is available in the contact us section on our website. And then we also have sections to compare our products. You can choose like what features you want. Like if you want 10 gig, there's a checkbox for that. And then we also have a NAS selector that will make recommendations for you. So at this point, we're going to switch gears to the question and answer period. I do believe we have one more poll to give you, and then we're going to get that going, and then we're going to prepare for some questions. So stick around, keep asking questions, and I'll be here to answer.
And I have that poll running, but while that's going, Shane, if you guys want to dive into questions, you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. We'll make most use of our time. So yeah, so great presentation, and thanks for sharing that with everybody. I think there's some good amount of questions that came in here, so I'll kind of prioritize them by who's paying me on the side here, get their questions asked. So the first one I think is a common question that's typically asked of storage vendors when dealing in Citrix environments with multi-site scenarios. So the question was does your solution support active site scenarios? So I think that can be, or mainly intended for DR, disaster recovery scenarios.
Yeah, so I guess I should clarify this point. For high availability, that's always an on-site solution. So that is two NAS that are connected together. And we do have that one model on the high end that is active. For cross-site, I guess the closest that you would get for that would be to use Synology Drive and sync the files from one site to the other. So that means if you make any a change on either site, like that file is sent over there.
Right. So I guess in the context of probably the question was around like profile management or like FS logics for profile containers. So in that scenario, it seems like it would be localized to one site and not cross-site. It's not a cross-site clustered file system or something like that, right? Instead, you'd have two separate Synology devices at each location, and then basically have users pinned to each data center working locally. In that case, there's nothing to cross-site replication. Yeah. Okay.
So in that case, if you're talking about like having an iSCSI one for storage, then your only option would be replication. So it wouldn't be active, but you would have disaster recovery capabilities.
Okay. Yeah, so we have another question here came in related to, I gotta skip past all the jokes we had here. So there's a question from Jacob related to, can we add Citrix hypervisor? Can we add Citrix hypervisor support for ABFB? He's throwing acronyms out there because he's in the know, Jacob. But ABFB and KVM VRSH hypervisor while we're at it. He's a big Synology fan.
Our active backup for business. That is our backup software, which unfortunately does not support those at the moment. The way to get that supported is to make a feature request on our website. That's once again in that contact us section that I keep mentioning. Just go in there and make the request and show us that you're interested, and then we send that feedback to our headquarters.
Okay, that sounds good. That's fair. So another question related to the question was what about ShareFile, right? So looking at the solution that you provided, we have users that are remote. They're able to access those files that are on-prem through a web interface, similar to ShareFile storage zones. What's provided through that functionality through the connectors. So I guess the question there is, I guess, do you have any integration with ShareFile? And also, I'd just add on to that something that I was thinking about. Are you looking at integrating with other partners, third-party solutions, whether it's OneDrive, Dropbox, Box, and kind of be an aggregator or anything like that? What's your thoughts around that?
So unfortunately, we don't have integration with the Citrix solution, which is why we focus on just Citrix hypervisor. And we talked about our own file storage solution, but we do have the capability to sync your files with OneDrive, with Google Drive, with Dropbox, with Box, and that's through our Cloud Sync software. And that works similarly to Synology Drive, except instead of syncing to somebody's computer or NAS, it syncs with that cloud destination.
Okay, so that's interesting. So yeah, it's something that I think to dig further into. I had another question related to that came in related to TCP ports for setting up remote replication.
Oh, just like what ports need to open? It's off the top of my head, it's 5560 is the only port that's needed.
Nice. That was a good question off the top of the dome. Still got it. A lot of people don't remember stuff anymore, you know, with Google. It's all about Google food, you know, being able to pull that information quickly. So that was good. So another question came in here related to the, you know, can I run 2 HA pairs in each data center and replication happening in each for DR?
Yeah,
Happening to each, so basically cross site, which I think you
right.
said you weren't able to do, right?
So let me explain this a little bit. So in high availability, it basically acts as one NAS. So if you have two sites and there's high availability set up at each site, you could totally replicate data between them, because at that point, the replication task isn't going to be aware that it's high availability. It just sees one NAS, and that's all it's going to set its data to. So you could do high availability and then on two sites and then replicate data between them. That's not an issue at all.
Okay, so that makes so you're able to do the cross-site replication and that from that perspective, from a DR standpoint of having a replicated copy of that data set on the other side.
Right. But
Okay.
what you won't have, to maybe answer this more clearly for the earlier question as well, is you can't have those two sites have totally automatic failover between them.
Right. No, I think
you just have manual failover capabilities between the two sites, but each site would have its own HA cluster that provides failover.
right. Okay. Okay, and then so I have another question that we have here related to kind of data classification. And is that something that you're looking to do as your, as security obviously is a big concern, remote users sending data in and out of the enterprise, right? Are you doing any kind of data leak, hooking up with third-party solutions for data leak prevention, or looking at, files that are coming in and out at, do they have social security card numbers or credit card numbers and things like that? Is that something that you're doing today, or is it on the roadmap?
I'm not aware of us doing anything like that, since in a lot of cases we provide just the storage. You can access it, through SMB, through FTP, NFS, whatever protocol you're using. Kind of in my experience, we would expect other software to step in and take that role, for just because there's so many different things that need to be regulated based on industry and specific parts of that industry. So to create a software solution for that is like kind of beyond what we're going for, but we have no problem if you want to connect something else to our products.
Sure. Yeah, it might be a good partner opportunity there for third party, maybe integration in the future. Yes, and you're correct. Mike had mentioned, that's DR is not, high availability in that scenario, right? It's for more of a disaster recovery. Can you make WebDAV connections? Was it another question that came in?
Yes, you can. WebDAV is supported.
Okay. All right. I think that is there any more questions that anyone wants to submit? I think that's looking through. I think I hit on, how secure is Quick Connect? Missed that one at the top.
Sure. So we have an entire white paper on this if you really wanted to get into the details. But you can enable HTTPS connections. If data goes through our relay server, it will be through an SSL connection. So it really depends on how you're using it and how you set it up. And since there's so many different variables, I definitely recommend the white paper on that. But generally, I would say it is fairly secure, at least as secure as any sort of connection over the internet can be without going through VPN. But if you're truly concerned about security and you're setting this up for business, you might want to consider going that more advanced option and setting up a VPN.
Okay, and then one more question just came in. I know we're coming up on, we're just over the time here, so we'll close out after this. The last and final question. Notice you're running virtual DSM. Is that available to the public to learn DSM?
So virtual DSM is only available on Synology NAS products. So you have to have a server, and then you can virtualize DSM on that server. If you do want to play around with the interface, there is a live demo on our website.
All right. Well, cool. I think that's it. I guess Stephanie, if you wanna take it away, I think we're good. Any questions? Yeah.
All right, 1 second. There we go. Just have one last slide for you guys. And I did put in the chat the survey link that I mentioned earlier. Again, it's short and anonymous and for CUGC use only. We just like to get your feedback on our webinars. And just a reminder, if you opted in at registration for a chance to win the DiskStation DS220 Plus, we will choose that winner offline. I like to close out the webinar, get the full registration report because people do register after we start, so we want to be fair. So I'll get the full report and I'll use Google Randomizer. We'll select the winner and we will announce that winner on Twitter. So be sure to follow us on Twitter at myCUGC. It's also a good place to just keep up with us and keep an eye on what we're doing and what's going on. Also, just remind you, if you haven't been to mycugc.org in a while, we invite you to come by and check out our latest blogs and the discussion forums. There's lots of great information for you there. Find your local group if you haven't already. Get connected and find out when your next meeting is. There's lots of networking and great connections you can make at mycugc.org. So we hope to see you there again soon. And with that, I am going to give you all back to your day. Thanks so much, Dustin and Shane. Thanks for being with us today. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
It was
thank
a
you.
lot of fun. All right, take care, everybody.
All right. I hope you all have a great day. Stay happy, healthy, and safe. And we'll see you at another CUGC event again soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.